How are you, everyone? Good to see that everybody already here. That's wonderful. Feed my cat. We just started watching this film called Flow with the cat. That is in a world where most people basically disappeared. I guess after the event. Looks like a really fun film. So just started watching it. You said a cat. What's up, Miriam and Coach? Chris, good to see you. Laser gazing, molecular phasing, wonder books. That's pretty amazing. What you talking about? 7 a.m. Woke up at 4. Why'd you wake up at 4? What's up, core family? Indeed. Did you see my Vaseline on the pouch? We both had it sitting on. No. No. 1 second. Huh? Can't hear you. What's up, Sofa King? How am I feeling? Yeah, maybe a little bit better. Was a little bit under the weather today for sure. But overall, beautiful Saturday. Went to Laguna Beach. Walked around with the doggies. It was nice. Five in the pack. Okay. Welcome, everyone, from all the platforms, TikTok and YouTube and Twitch and X. Welcome to Simulation Talk 155. The channel revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found proof to believe in a simulation. And we meet here every single day almost to discuss the phenomena, the experimentation around it, the implications, as well as science, religion, spirituality, philosophy, God, and whatever comes to mind. Thank you so much for joining today. By the way, if you're on TikTok and you want to watch the longer versions of all the videos that you see here, including the longer formats conversation of the clips that you see here, check out my YouTube channel, which is Dango Thoughts. DANGO Thoughts. Let me lower this light. And you can actually follow just the link in the description. Oh, Chris already gifted 5 people memberships. Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate you. This is deeply appreciated. Chris has been doing this for a while. So was Ebony, and so was Ben. My YouTube channel includes membership programs now, which include early access to all the videos I'm releasing, Zoom calls with me, with the group, and even personally, depending on the tier of the membership, as well as private things for my life that will only live on YouTube memberships, and weekly lives, aside from the daily lives. We actually have one coming up tomorrow. I'm going to post it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I appreciate all the members that joined, and of course, Chris and Ebony and Ben, who have been gifting people memberships for the last, I don't know, month or so. It's kind of, I'm saying it every day, but I mean it every day. It's kind of amazing. It definitely helps the channel tremendously because the memberships allow the channel to be more self-sustainable. And it's my job now, as I always say, to make sure that people will stay. So I'm doing my best to create content that's of a different kind. And Ebony also gifted 5 people. Wow. Well, so this is a reason to come and check out the YouTube channel, because sometimes memberships are also being gifted. But even if they're not, I promise that we are doing our best to make sure that the content that's coming up soon is going to be one that would want me make people sign up. It's going to be worth it. Yoni is saying, my first ever membership, ever love. No words good enough. Well, I'm glad that you like it. Amazing. STU saying, just watched some of your podcasts. Never tried the spirit molecule, but very eager in this subject. Wow, fascinating. Well, I appreciate you. Oh, and Sofikin got a membership, finally. All the right people got the memberships. People have been showing up. Again, Ebony, um, thank you as well. And Chris, of course, thank you so much. Deeply appreciated. And I'm sure the people appreciate it as well. You showed brain expansion and proved it for me enough. Looks Iron is saying. What are you referring to, brother? And Nico is in the house. How you doing, my man? So today, because I know that every night I say this, and every night we're staying longer. So again, depending on what what actually happens, we'll see. But I'm trying my best today. Oh, I see the code. Yeah, to not finish these nights too late. Just because my days, I do want to try and start them a little earlier at this point. But let's see what happens. So in the spirit of that, I want to do something that maybe aim in a particular direction today. Okay, saying I've been trying to do the experiment while lucid dreaming. How did that go? Also, how did you do that? Did you just set up the laser in the dream? I appreciate your words, Lux Iron. So to all the newcomers, if you're not familiar and don't know, a few years ago I discovered that if you project a refracted laser on the surface and ingest a spirit molecule, you will see code running in surfaces. And this observation has now been affirmed. Lindsay, how are you? By many, many individuals worldwide. And this is one of the main reasons why we're meeting here every day, almost every day. So today I want to maybe do something a little bit more targeted. Because I think that a lot of the talk that is going on recently, both around the fires here in LA and also around other topics like UAPs, awakening, everything I'm talking about, they are gaining a particular kind of flavor of alarmism, and to some degree there is a sense of fear-mongering, but really it's just a matter of perspective, right? No matter how crazy things become, it's always a matter of perspective. And we are all entitled to our convictions and how we approach things. It really yesterday we had this conversation with Brian and Ion that came on and talked about it. And I even have some people that are relatively close to me, people on my team, Levy Whittles, who I'm deeply grateful to, that helps organize the Discord. They don't always agree with me on this point, where for example, with Lovey Whittles, and this is not to isolate her, just to point out that even people that I owe tremendous thanks for a lot of stuff that they do, and which means I have deep respect for them. There is this conviction in general that some people, as Lovey Whittles said, want to see the world burn. As I've expressed in the last few days, I disagree with the idea that there are evil groups operating at the core of what humanity is at the moment that are aiming towards that kind of an outcome for no other reason but that itself. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And if we believe that, I mean, at that point, we should just quit everything. There's no point of doing any of this. And honestly, if that is the case, we shouldn't be here as humanity. If we gave rise to a world in which the the people with the most control in the world are interested in actually seeing the rest of the world burn, we definitely shouldn't be here as a species. And then I think all of us should be okay with that. I think that's a sensible thing to do. I just simply don't think that is the case. Well, it doesn't make any sense for numerous reasons. Before I say anything on that, I just want to point out that it's not that what I'm saying is that there are no people in the world that are so angry at everything that they want to see the world burn. Sure, that always exists. There are psychopaths in the world. There are people that are so marginalized and pushed away by society, a lot of the homeless population, that to them, that attitude to me would be completely understandable. And by the way, this can also be exemplified by many of the instances of some of the fires in LA. The majority of them, I would submit to you, start from very natural processes. It happens every year. It's a natural occurrence that has to do with the dryness of the weather right before the winds. And then, really, and this is the thing that may be hard for people to appreciate, but you really don't need much to spark a fire. You need literally a spark, which can come from very, very large number of kinds of things. It can come from not even anybody trying to arson anything. It's just somebody's doing a barbecue or homeless people burning some tires. If the wind is strong enough, which it was at 100 miles per hour here in LA, which is hurricane level, then uh, these little sparks will be flying around everywhere, and literally one of them is enough to start a fire in the brush, the really dry leaves and branches that fell down during the autumn. So most fires start this way, and it happens every year. And it is also true to say that at least in the last few years, it was huge mismanagement by the government here in California to both clean up and misallocating funds. All of these things are true. It is exacerbated by the fact that when these things start, there's a tendency by people who are angry at the world, which I assure you definitely not the people that most people consider here, like the people in control, um, but the people at the lowest levels of society, the homeless population, which we should be very, very compassionate towards. There's numerous uh, instances and videos now of them literally starting fires on purpose, both in residential areas and in areas where it can catch on to something like what you see burning everywhere. This would easily explain why a lot of the fires, when one or two start, all of a sudden the rest of them start, because then you're kind of covered by the occurrence, and it's a lot easier to not be investigated because everybody would assume that it's or at least most of the authorities would assume that it's just part of the natural occurrence, and honestly it's very difficult to find out. Also, I would like to point out to people that the second one fire goes with winds of that kind, the amount of sparks now is exponential, because now you have, from the big fire, you have a lot of sparks flying all over the place, and now it's very easy to catch the rest of them on fire. The coordination that people are talking about look at all these fires starting together. I mean, see, if the reason that it's important to, well, aside from the fact that it's important to know the truth when the truth is available, it is also important to understand that the kinds of ideas that vitiating these emergencies, they themselves spread like wildfire. And that wildfire is a lot more corrosive because it spreads globally, and it adds up to a global fire that is occurring in the moment of people who really, not because they're not well off, but because the meaning was sucked out of their lives. They want something to mean something, which, by the way, would also um, explain why a lot of people set up these fires when they can, is because now they mean something. They caused something enormous to happen. And that is a very deep, albeit negative, but very deep, it it fulfills a very deep need of the human soul, which is the need for meaning. That is what we thrive on. You guys will forgive me. I will just go on for a little while, and then we'll look at your comments after, because I want to make sure that I deliver this point. But what is important to understand that this global fire of trading in fear creates ripples not just for that moment, but it creates ripples for the potential human future, where we eliminate the possibility of gaining more trust of outcome, of one another, and of what we are capable of in terms of the goodness that is in us versus all the things that we keep postulating that are bad in us. So even that alone gives us good enough of a reason to try and reframe and not, as I keep saying, keep pointing fingers at everything that we think is to blame. It's a natural human tendency to blame things so we can feel at least that something makes sense. It's hard to swallow the idea that natural disasters just happen. It does not mean that across the board in all of these instances now, excuse my voice, now and with natural disasters in general, it does not mean that there's always a very straightforward explanation that only has to do with what, the natural occurrence itself. But of course, humans sometimes uh, join in, as it is happening now. So I just want to put this point to rest from a logical perspective. This idea that people have that the richest of the rich will just burn a whole city, including other rich people's properties. Um, that's the equivalent of believing in magic, because that postulates that you think that somebody that is extremely competent, which means they did quite a few things in the world that translated to success, are also missing a giant fact about the world, which is that when chaotic systems and processes unfold, by definition, and I'm using the word chaos here from a technical standpoint, chaos means impossible to predict even in principle. Even with the most advanced computational models, you would not be able to predict it. That's the definition of chaos in mathematics. So when chaotic system of that kind, which wildfires definitely are, unfold, there's simply no telling of what in fact can happen. So if you think that somebody that got to a level of success where they can pull some strings and make big things like this happen in a coordinated manner, surrounding some major conspiracies around insurances and all of that stuff, that's, first of all, it's a belief in level of mental ability that simply doesn't exist on this planet. That's first of all. Second of all, it's a belief of human evil of such a level that, like I said, if you believe that, you should definitely surrender your soul card and say, we're not worthy to be around. That's what I would do if I would believe that. Now, I happen to not think that is the case, but from every single angle and perspective that you might look at it, the only way, if we ask ourselves, what are the actual solutions moving forward, both in all the things that we know that are real problems that needs to be solved on Earth, from global warming to human conflict and whatever else you want to throw into this beautiful bouquet of chaos. Someone remember water, yeah. The only way forward is, first of all, to lower the temperature, both in our conversations, in the way that we talk to one another, talk to ourselves, and especially on the global stage. I understand that we all want to matter. So we want to say things that translate to something that means to somebody else. And during a time of an emergency, that's a perfect opportunity to do so with a relatively easy, um, well, relatively easily. You can just say whatever, and everybody are joining in because everybody are very worked up about something. And if you say something in the direction where the wind blows, you essentially become part of this very strong blow that feels like something. And that's a very intoxicating feeling. The problem with that is that you are literally adding, and the metaphors here just could not be more perfect. You're adding to the amount of wind blowing in the direction of inciting more fire. And that is not a hypothetical. That is exactly what is happening. From there, people proceed to become angrier and angrier at things that they cannot influence or change. And that is a big problem. Because trying to, if you exert too much energy in the direction of something that is on a different plane for you, in other words, it will recede from you forever because it's too far away from you from being able to influence, you will simply exhaust yourself and you will definitely not be able to find any solutions for the future. It's the equivalent of trying to chase the sun. You'll never get to the sun because it's on a different plane. It's infinitely away from you because you're moving along the wrong plane, along the wrong dimension to try and catch it. It's not where you're going. It's in a different plane. It's in the third dimension when you're trying to go towards it in a two-dimensional plane. The same is happening here. People are pointing fingers at things that they do not understand. And for the most part, they're pointing a finger at the wrong, not just direction, but at the wrong plane. The problem is not that once in a while there's a natural disaster that is even accompanied by human action that causes it to be worse. The problem is how we deal with these uh, occurrences and how we treat each other during it and after it. The only way we can create a better world is if we first look at ourselves and how we respond to every single instance of our existence, and especially during times where other people might need us. So I know it's difficult for people to imagine, but the very wealthy and the very rich, they're people too. Now, this is not a speech about defending the ultra wealthy and powerful. This is just to point out that the second you lose the ability to see the humanity in any kind of human for no other reason but their positioning in society or some other arbitrary reason without meeting them or understanding anything about how they operate or their lives, there's a part of humanity that dies in you because in the end of the day, they are you. They are part of the same thing that you are. And if you believe that they're capable of the evils that you're projecting on them, you believe those evils about yourself if you were in their position. Otherwise, they would be unfathomable to you and you would never consider them about them in the first place. That is a very important point because in the end of the day, you can't really influence anything about what they do and when. So even if they are concocting some evil plan that you might thought about, the amount of energy that people exert towards these things on social media solves nothing, creates more of a turmoil around other people, and creates less of a trust in institutions that actually are important. I talked about this a lot in the last few weeks and maybe even months. But aside from all the stuff that I'm seeing in hyperspace, I'm also seeing the picture as it is emerging here to be of the kind that is simply unsustainable, but not for the reason that people think. It's unsustainable because the thing that brings solutions is minds coming together and working in collaboration, and that requires participation, listening, patience, compassion, all of these things that we would like to maybe champion, but at the same time we fail to actuate around every single time that they actually needed, and we only virtue signal around them usually when it's convenient. When it really matters, like in cases like these, this is the time that you want to see the humanity in other people more than other time. So no matter how much you want to twist around this, unless we're capable of seeing the humanity in everybody, including the homeless people that are actually inciting the fire sometimes, including the fact that sometimes natural disasters happen and we have to accept that, and even towards the people in power that, just like you, if you would be in their position, are probably trying to find the best solutions and they're just failing when it doesn't happen. Now, it has to do, of course, with a lot of things that we might criticize in our leaders and our people in power, like laziness, stupidity, all the reasons that would say they're not justified to be in their position. I can totally understand how that can be infuriating. But in times like these, we actually want to empower the people in power, not because we want to give them more power, but because we want to give them the confidence that the people who are relying on them are behind their decisions. That is something that, if we can do, just like we talked about the other day, when there's a certain frame that you're projecting on other humans, they would tend to try and step into that frame. Will it always succeed? No. A lot of the times, the people that are corrupt, like we imagine that they are, because some of them are, will keep doing what they're doing. But statistically, we have a much better chance under the current way that things are operating by putting the trust in the people that are already in power. The best we can do is to try and remedy this is by actually electing them out and paying attention to both elections and what people in power are doing during other times. People rise to the occasion very often, and they and they somebody is throwing up here. In the end of the day, what I'm seeing now happening in the world is that we simply have to stop bringing everything to the worst possible conclusion every single time something happens. I know it's very attractive to do that, and this is not something that I can stop from anybody from doing. But if you would ask me for my advice, this is the only thing you can do in order to guarantee that you have the best chance of getting through this period of humanity. Now let's talk about the slightly more hyperbolic out there claims. This is not something I talk about openly a lot, but I think it is important to mention maybe here. For what it's worth, and to the extent that I've gained any kind of credibility among the people that are listening to me, I can tell you that it's difficult to discern very often what is actually happening in that hyperspace. But recently, it became pretty evident that there is this enormous transition that is happening both there, which translates to also here. There are some changes in the ways that things are going to be done from here because certain things on this plane are unsustainable. That means that you have to reshuffle. But what do? Well, you try and figure out what are the attitudes that are sustainable over time, and those are the ones that you sanction, and those are the ones that you protect. I think we can all guess that the kinds of attitudes that I was just describing, including the ones that are simply disguising themselves as, look, I'm just trying to help you because I'm just trying to tell you what you should be looking out for, are essentially poison. They're poison because they're not actually offering you any help or solutions. They're just telling you, watch out. From what? They're just telling you to be careful, not to be careful, but they tell you to be fearful. They tell you, look at all this crazy stuff that is going on. I was the one that told you. It has everything to do with a self-centered point of view of the individuals who are employing this attitude because it makes them feel important. It has nothing to do with them caring about what you need. What you need is to be at peace. What you need is equanimity. These things are not always easy to achieve, especially not during times of plight and difficulty, and especially not during major disasters like is happening now. But these are the only attitudes that can sustain us over time. Whether we choose to stay on Earth indefinitely and just build our world here, or depart into the stars, or do both and combine the tasks to merge into this beautiful thing that basically both creates the most beautiful gardens and the most beautiful structures in space. Whatever it is that we decide to do over time, it is it can only be sustained by the kinds of attitudes that would be closer to what the Buddha was uh, teaching versus the kinds of attitudes that people seem to be employing now on a regular basis. All of this is easier said than done because, in the end of the day, when push comes to shove and when the emotions are high, it's kind of difficult to do the right thing and feel the right things. And I fail to do it myself all the time. Something that was today, I think, was it Liquid Glass? I think he texted me and he posted something on one of the threads, and he pointed something out. He said, "Well, look, yeah, you're basically telling everybody not to point your fingers. Essentially, by doing that, you're pointing fingers." I understand how that might look that way, but that's not at all what I'm doing. What I'm pointing out is the only way that can actually work. I squarely put myself in the group of people that are failing to not point fingers, and I do this all the time, of course. But to the extent that I can, I will keep reminding that to everybody and myself because I also understand that we simply have no more time to entertain the kinds of attitudes, the primitive ways of the past. And I want to point out that, by the way, that these ways have nothing to do with just allowing anything to happen. You can take strong action when it's required without the negative emotion attached to it. It is a difficult thing to do, but it's important to do. So you can sternly say to the government that they're doing something wrong, but we want to do it with while at the same time trying to eliminate as much of the hateful attitude that comes behind it. Those two have nothing to do with one another. The anger that we feel inside about things that we believe are being in the ways that we're being wronged, um, they they have nothing to do with coming up with the solutions. They're not the ones that actually drive us to say the right things. If anything, we say the wrong things when we're angry. It's important to recognize this because you can say something strongly and sternly without the hatred behind it or the anger. And that, again, is difficult to do, especially during an emergency. But the people who are not being uh, directly affected by the fires, the ones that are angry at the world, the ones that are talking about the conspiracy theories and taking the opportunity to basically make it all about the thing they believe, like UAPs or anything else, they're doing nothing more than basically keep pushing their own personal whatever makes them happy, whatever they want to happen. They don't ask for 1 second what other people need to happen. And what other people need to happen is not to hear all your conspiracy theories and your uh, things that you failed to resolve and anger management. So now you're projecting it on the government and on everybody else. Are people doing wrong things? Yes, all the time. So do you. That's part of life. It's called being an adult to understand that we're all flawed and we're all trying our best. Are the ones that are the ones that are trying to actually hurt other people for their own enjoyment? I'm sure of that, but they're very, very few. Most humans are just trying their best. Recognizing that and understanding that we're essentially all trying to do the same thing and just failing all the time, that's the only way that we can proceed to the next step of human evolution. And there's no more, that's not a drill. This is happening now. The singularity is here. It is happening. Whatever it is, which I assure you nobody knows, what it really is, nobody knows. But it is here. It is no longer coming. It is here right now. So all I'm telling you, to the extent that I have any conviction to convince you of anything just by saying so, go in, focus on love, focus on things that you can do to help other people, focus on the things you love and the people and the animals and whatever it is that invokes the feeling of love inside of you. Every time you catch yourself being angry or pointing fingers or being negative about something, try and lower the volume on that as much as you possibly can. That's all I can say on that. So it's not to me it's not about some kind of a logical argument about it. I'm not here to win debates. I'm just telling you what I know will work and what I know for a fact will fail.
Hey, Danny, how's it going?
How you doing, brother?
I don't have much time, but I just wanted to come on for a moment because what you just said has been really resonating with me these last few days. Um, I've seen a lot of my friends post, theories about why these fires are happening. And, and these are my friends that are kind of like on these spiritual journeys, right? And what I felt is our first immediate response should be compassion, right? For someone who posted a photo of their house burned down. Not a theory about the Democrats, not a theory about some Maui connection about that fire versus this fire or some large thing. And kind of you said something a couple of weeks ago. You said, when you're on an airplane and the airplane loses pressure, the first step is that you need to put your oxygen mask on and then, your child's. And I feel like if we want peace, a peaceful world, you need to find inner peace. You need to be in charge of your inner peace before. And if your immediate instinct is not to give compassion to, people, then I feel like there's something really wrong there, right? You're being triggered. And one thing that worries me is as we enter this era of information, this singularity with information just being so easy to manipulate, I'm worried that a lot of people aren't building this peace and this patience with information, right? Like to not overreact to certain information and just kind of be patient and wait for the facts to come out. I'm very open to there being some, really horrible news behind all of this, but I'm also, like you said, and when you look at the facts, this is an unprecedented weather event, right? High winds. Although there are videos of people starting fires, there's also a lot of videos of power lines flying, breaking off and starting a ton of sparks. And so, how could we claim to know what happened, right? And how could we just react to that and just have a sense of commitment to that, right? I think the number one thing is to just find that peace and compassion. But really appreciate that you just said that because it's something that I feel like we need. And and I think you're right. The singularity, this I don't want to get this Neuralink chip. I'd rather just be as human as possible and connect with my humanity and not not need a high bandwidth chip to process news, right? And what's fake, what's real. I'd rather just kind of find peace. But that's all I got to say, Danny. Thank you so much for that.
I appreciate you, Nico. Thank you so much for your kind words. I obviously agree with everything you said. The only thing I'm not so sure about is that so I think we should eliminate the second you eliminate the fear from all of it, then the right move will become apparent when it's required. So even Neuralink and high bandwidth and all of that stuff does not need to be feared or categorized as something that is bad, because in fact it was created with the aim to help as many people as possible. If we discover that we can do that without any technology or external technology, and we can just use some internal technology that to remedy a lot of the disease and also all the stuff that Neuralink is actually designed to eventually solve, like blindness, paraplegics, and all of these things. And yes, also bandwidth, because we would need to interact with information on a different level. And again, there's nothing bad about that. That's just the nature of how things evolve. If we see that we can do it without that, and it's already integrated in us in some form, which I know a lot of people believe strongly, that's wonderful. When you act without, and we should do that, but when you act without fear, it will be very apparent what is what. When you act without fear, it's apparent what the thing that is trying to come in, is it relevant or irrelevant to the situation. If we see that we can do these things naturally, there's really no reason to implant anything or do anything else. But I would say that, and this is a difficult one because um, this is a perfect example of why it's so difficult. Because this last part you said about, you gave this beautiful overview of everything, and you are a beautiful person, and you speak with such from so much love and kindness. So it's very easy to just take what you said on face value and say, I agree with everything you said. And then the last part you said, it has this tone of like, we shouldn't go there, right? But I think we're doing a disservice if we're removing anything from the plate as a possibility without looking at it not through the eyes of fear. Because if we don't need that without the eyes of fear, we will know we don't need that. But we might need that, and we need to be able to be neutral about that, because the solutions might actually only come when we are connected to these things. It's funny how we're talking about integration and connection and all of these things, and then if it comes in the form that we don't expect, like if it comes from through the technological story, if we don't see it in the way that we imagined it, it's almost like we say, no, but I don't want that. Well, what if that's part of the story of connection, that you actually go through the technological and it expresses what you would call the spiritual? I don't see them as separate at all. the, it's maybe a yes, it's maybe a no, but we will never know unless we if we keep being afraid of it, that included. Again, I'll give you just a simple example. If you have a really big disaster coming right now, like for example, I don't know, a meteor strike, something much bigger than these fires, something that can potentially actually threaten the entire life on the planet. If let's say we discover it now and it's coming here in 3 months, at the moment we're screwed. That's it. That's that sentence. But if we have something like Neuralink and we can put very smart people in a room instead of sending emails, and they can all think into a shared space, they might come up with a solution in a week or two. And we'll be able to implement that solution. And we'll be able to allow not just ourselves, but the entire of the biosphere to survive. I would also like to point out that our genetic code and everything else that makes us physical humans is also a technology. It's not a metaphor. It is a technology. It's a it's the genetic code is literally a code, like computer code, that codes for a function in the physical space. So there's really no separation there. I think we need to zoom out. But whether we need these what we call external devices or we don't, whatever the answer is, it will only come to us if we drop a lot of the fear, which brings me back to the original point. Um, yeah, assumptions like what Rick just said. I would think if someone has the chip, when you pass, I don't think your soul may be able to move on. See, that's exactly what I mean. Like the concept here, right? We don't even know what the soul is. We don't know any of these things. So we essentially projecting our fears. The thing that I think will prevent our beings of moving on to the next level, the ones that will fail, is fear. Always. It's the inability to see what needs to be done when it needs to be done on time, because you were either afraid or acting out of a place where something was blocking the next step of whatever was unfolding. So it's a dicey situation because there's also a lot of risks involved. But I'm claiming that we'll never be able to see the truth without actually allowing it to be what it is.
Hey Danny, sorry. I wanted to,
Please, please.
you're right. It is, I do have a fear of this kind of integration with technology. And if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have been like, I'm all about it. Like, sign me up right now. I'll take the beta. I'll do the prototype, right? But what I've learned fairly recently with a lot of these molecules is that I've been operating with my thinking mind, and I've realized that the heart is very much so a mind as well. Like I kind of felt this separation between my mind and my heart, and once I started exploring that and this kind of like human intuition, or just something that is not computational, just like logic from your prefrontal cortex, but kind of a deeper level of integration. I started to kind of have a sense of, no, I like I like this kind of machine that I'm in, right? I like this computer that I'm in, and I don't want to interact with or I don't want to integrate with other technology is kind of what I thought. But the amount of time I spend on my phone and on my computer, I'm probably extremely integrated already, right?
Oh yeah, you're part of the
Just not
system.
even knowing it. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah,
totally.
but also
So
again, it's not. What is it? Do you realize what a bias that is? To say what I am now, that's it. It's perfect. When nothing in the universe ever stops evolving.
yeah, yeah, and so but I often wonder how much of like I do have this desire to be disconnected at some point, like which is interesting because right now like the goal is like, okay, can I can I play in the matrix so that I can exit the matrix, right? Is kind of like the game plan that I have. And by exiting the matrix, I mean, like, can I live in the Amazon in Peru and like not be doom scrolling on TikTok, right? Like, but can I use the matrix to escape the
So
matrix
so I want
kind
to
of
point
thing? Is
so I want to point something out that is kind of sometimes hard to see. Notice that what happens there is a projection of your mind to what you think it will be.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is a
No,
trick of your
totally.
mind,
And
right?
this is
So
the
it's like,
grass is always greener thing that
yeah,
I've
when you're actually there and you have to survive and without
yeah,
any, that feels very different. And it can be
yeah,
beautiful, but it doesn't have all the facets of the, just like, oh, now I'm like all connected to nature. You connected to nature the one you do. So it's, to the way that I see it is, uh we were human constantly overcorrect, constantly. And what I'm trying to, I guess, bring into the picture to the extent that I can is like, hey, let's start swinging from side to side and just stand in the middle. Just stand in the middle. So instead of saying, so what I'm hearing happening, and you're not the only one, what I'm hearing happening is that people move from like all thinking, 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 and then they discover the heart and they go, oh, all heart now, all heart, no brain, no heart,
yeah,
all heart. It's like, okay, why can't we have, like, why can't you just balance the scales? The mind
yeah,
has a role. If you, again, like I always say, I know you heard me say this a billion times, you can sing Kumbaya all day, the sun will engulf the earth. So you need the
well,
mind to figure
and
that
when
out,
you look
right?
at systems that approach equilibrium, they have that behavior, right?
There
Like
is no
the idea
equilibrium in the
being that,
universe. So it's like the equilibrium is in places where you see the structures in the temporary time that they hold the structure. But in the end, all structures pass. Everything is transient.
yeah,
It's the attachment. So the way that I see it, this is the new kind of attachment to form disguised in the shape of spirituality. It is essentially saying this is perfect, so you're attaching to this. This is good. This is good. Like, no, you can't do that. It's not up to you. It's just gonna keep going. The resistance to that is the same resistance that we had to every single thing that made us suffer so far. So we have an opportunity to stop suffering by stop
yeah,
tethering ourselves to every single layer. So it's like the mind has a role. It's clearly playing a very important role. The heart has a role, which has been forgotten largely because of the amount of information available. Those things will balance out. They're trying to balance out, but they can only balance out if you allow them to unfold in you in a balanced way instead of trying to focus too much on one of them. And in the end, you either gonna have a situation where you just keep swinging from side to side forever, or you allow yourself to actually, balance these scales inside of you. There's no other way. So it's just that we happen to be able to perceive the process in a way that no other conscious being on this planet so far could, because they can't understand. They just kind of go with whatever is the next thing, and that's part of bliss. And I would submit to you that there's a very large possibility that essentially we grew as much as you can grow into this box, and actually the solution for what you just described, which is you want to go to the Amazon. If you ask yourself why you want to do that, well, it's because you want to turn off all the noise. But why do you want to turn off all the noise? Well, there's too much, right? The impulse is too much, too much. Okay, so too much means either you eliminate yourself from the situation where it feels too much, or you create a self or a unitary consciousness that can absorb more of whatever it is. So then you push the walls away. So then you basically expand the
Yeah.
box. And then if you can have a higher bandwidth, doing all the stuff we're doing now every day that stresses us out, like posting, doing emails, all of that stuff, can be completely compartmentalized in one part of now the larger mind you have, and it's just done automatically by some functions that are kind of like AI. And you, the conscious you don't have to be aware of them all the time, and now you get to actually experience more balance and peace just like you would in the Amazon, only you can take it with you anywhere. You don't have to find a particular location. There's a famous book, wherever you go, there you are, right? Wherever you're going to go to the Amazon, it will find you. Whatever it is, you can't escape yourself. So what you want to address is that element of how the self is appropriating itself. On Earth, so far, it is true that under certain conditions and certain environments, you have an easier time to appropriate that self. I would claim that's just a practice stage. You can't keep trying to find a location to help you do that. You need to learn to do that just where you are, no matter where you are, because that's the actual practice, that's the actual test. That is actually what meditation teaches you. But overall,
That's
that
a
would,
really good point.
yeah,
Yeah.
that will take you to
Yeah.
the ability to take it anywhere, including exploring space, exploring whatever you want. And that fact that you can now automate a lot of these like very busy work processes, thank you, Don, but at the same time also feel inner peace. Well, that's a real possibility in the expanding the bandwidth space.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. And the noise analogy is perfect because I meditate to kind of listen to the noise and just be aware of it, right? And then just kind of that helps me at least know, like, oh, I'm in a noisy room. But and there's some baseline anxiety that I just build up just from like, working and trying to, do certain goals. I build up a lot of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about just even when I go camping, right? It's like, oh man, that just feels like the best thing I've ever experienced, like the best feeling. And it feels like you step out of this noisy coffee shop into this beautiful world, kind of.
But if you
you're
have to
right, I
live there,
should be
now
able
you have to
to.
worry about survival. Now you have to worry about bringing food. Now you have to worry about all these infinite number of things.
Yeah, totally. The jungle's trying to kill you. I
Yeah,
feel that.
everything in nature is trying to kill you. So we finally build a sustainable system for whatever minds we have to be comfortable in. Now it's time for the other side of the project. Bring meaning back. Include more of the biosphere in our aims and goals. Be a noble being versus a selfish being. Yes, I agree with all of that, but it does not mean you need to destroy the system that was built.
Yeah.
That was built in order for you to be able to consider these ideas. Because before, nobody was considering them before because you were just too busy surviving. And yeah, I think in the end of the day, it's kind of like I see more of this stage. I've spoke about this in the live before, but I really see it equivalent to kind of like the first beings that climbed out of the ocean, and they were not quite land creatures yet, but they were not no longer belonging to the ocean, so they lived in these weird mud puddles. And there's still some creatures like that today that kind of live in the tides. So basically the water would come in and they would kind of like get whatever thing they need from the water, and they would have kind of like not limbs, but they were the kind of limbs that are also fins that they could kind of swim around in shallow water. And then when the water would go away, they would stay on land for long periods of time. And then those limbs, and they would just basically kind of like jump around like that. And it's not exactly an optimized creature for the land, but it is an intermediary stage where it's a little uncomfortable, but you're in a new environment and you're trying to figure out the environment. Eventually, natural selection basically selected for the ones that survived, and they made the little jumpy, whatever they were, into more of a limb with more of a thing with a grip, and then they could actually specialize more. We are special beings in the sense that we can actually figure out universal things that allow us to influence the environment faster than it can influence our genome. So we can actually transform the environment for our own benefit. And so far, we've been using it very loosely, only for our immediate gain. But again, this is where the wisdom comes in. Now that we understand that we're in this some kind of new computational space that we discovered, this is a new land. This is not something we invented. We're trying to figure out how to maneuver through it, and we're trying to build new limbs, like the computers that we use. And so far, it's been clunky because it's not very well integrated. We're just kind of jumping around, and we're not really well suited for that environment yet. What I see in things like Neuralink are the first attempts to integrate it into what we are so we can easier maneuver through that space, which will hopefully also reduce the amount of anxiety. This is a point that Elon Musk made that it's possible, it's not, it hasn't been studied yet, but it is possible that the reason for the level of anxiety is the uneven ground between the amount of information you're receiving and the amount of information you get to respond. You know, when somebody's talking,
Totally. Yeah.
when somebody's just talking at you, just kind of like I'm doing to you guys all the time, the amount of anxiety can rise quite a bit, especially if it's in a private conversation, right? It's just somebody just talking, and you don't get to get the word in. Eventually, it's kind of equivalent to somebody doing this to you all day. It's kind of like, dude, can I just say, like, it gets stressful, right? Because you know, there's like you receive a lot, there's no equilibrium. But if you get to speak an even amount, then there's more of an even ground. And it's possible that the reason we feel so much anxiety from these devices is because the amount of information coming at us at any given moment is enormous because it's visual. And there's a lot of information that can move through visual. And the only thing you have to respond is your thumbs, which is very slow, right? So that might also create some of the anxiety. If you could react or respond in the same amount of like information you can just put in the same you're getting in, it will might actually even the ground, and it will also balance the scales. By the way, all of these ideas, none of them, none of them aim towards a world, at least in my mind, in which we just sit like robots and putting goggles on and we don't care about grass and like none of that is what is on my mind. It's that we're going to be able to appropriate ourselves in the physical world with this extra layer of computational layer that we can actually help integrate into what we are and then help build an even more beautiful world. The aim should still be the same of a more beautiful world that will be more inclusive for more beings, for more beauty and all of that stuff. It's the set of values that we carry, and there's no guarantee anywhere that we'll be able to do it. But as I what I started saying today is that there's certain attitudes that will for sure fail. Like for sure, it's gonna fail. If we have that amount of power and all we use it for is to fake videos about who made what and fake UAP videos. I'm not saying that all of them are fake, but people definitely faking a bunch of them. And we just use it to scare other people, then that's what it's going to look like. We're just using it for the wrong thing. We can use it for a lot more beautiful things. And that's up to us. That's on us. When you have these podcasts that people really love, right? They're like the mysterious thing, right? And people think it's like, well, it's just, it's entertainment. They're like, well, did you ever hear about this thing with the thing and the stuff? And now in 30 days, the world will end. That's crazy, man. And they seem to be very positive people, but literally you're just putting forth like a horrible scenario for the world. So forget about the fact that if you believe you create your own reality, you just created that reality, and that's a possibility now for you and all the people that enjoy what you're saying. That's no good, right? But even if it's not that easy, and you don't exactly just create your own reality, but co-create it with a larger structure, even there, you putting certain minds on a trajectory that is much more negative. I have a now I don't want to mention the name because I'm not sure she wants to be named, but at this point she's a good friend and she's a researcher, and we talk here and there, and she was asking me today about like, well, what do you think about the fires in LA, because she's not from here, and she said like, because people all send me all these like people that I really trust, it, you know um, people in academia, people, and she's like, yeah, like sending me all these videos about UAPs flying in the fires and like this is all like planned by the government, and I'm like, you already know what I'm gonna say, and it's like, this is the worst of the examples of humanity. It's like, what are you doing? Who needs this right now? Like, is this how you want to spend your time? You could spend this time, even if you don't live here. You can make a phone call. You can go on the website. You can look how you can help, donate. Forget about flying and help. It's like, how can you can donate? But that would help a lot more people. You know, animals. Like, where's that at? How easy it is to just make a shitty comment and like, ooh, I feel good because now I have a lot of likes because a lot of people like this crazy shit that I just said. It's childish. It's stupid. It's not helping anyone. It's like literally children's shit, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Danny. I'll talk to you soon.
Love you, brother.
Love you too. Peace.
Hey, Brian, how you doing, brother?
Hey, Danny. Yeah, just
every time my mind is just blown. Like listening to this stuff. Because I mean, I'm going to be completely honest, or I guess like transparent about my experience with the blaming. I'm not someone that tends to comment because I'm more of like a lurker anyway. But I feel like when it comes to like my mind, um, I've definitely fallen into the trap of thinking worst of people or thinking about like these conspiracies and like how, because I mean, like I grew up in Nigeria, and in Nigeria, the government is not particularly the best. And, it goes even to the point of killing people for rituals, for politics and stuff like this. And this is like what I grew up like seeing and hearing. Um, and I feel like I just had like a subconscious distrust for authority. Um, which is kind of weird because it's like if you're trying to change your environment for the better, like at some point you become the authority, and if you don't trust authority, how can you be a good steward of what that role is? So I think like that's basically like what the experience has been for me. Is like I could really relate to what you were saying about that transition of like sea creatures to land, where you have that like in between moments where you, you you're kind of like you're not optimized for where you are, but you're no longer optimized for where you used to be, and
there's no going back.
There's no going back. It's literally like it feels like every like growing experience, where like you're finally like good enough to know what you need to learn, and your mind is now like in a place where okay, I can do better. But all the people who are already doing better can't see you because they're like operating on a different like level of vocabulary that you don't have yet. And you just have to kind of, it's like that lonely moment of building up your words and going through those challenges that help you become the person that can uh, get to that point that you're trying to get to. And I think that like where I see that, the correlation I see with that and what's happening now with AI is it's no longer an individual journey. It's like we're all forced into, I don't want to say forced, but it does feel like we're being forced into this thing where we have to be those like people who don't have the vocabulary for X amount of time. And we have to contend with fear, and we have to contend with anxiety, but we still also have the opportunity to be patient or sit in whatever it is we're feeling. And it's like how do we even reconcile that as a community of people?
I will suggest something that it will be very difficult to accept or maybe absorb. So I don't expect anybody to just do that. But if you can, doesn't have to be right now. When you feel warm and fuzzy, if you can just allow that to maybe come in for a second and just entertain it. Can you entertain that it might be true? The only thing I would change about what you said is that you're not being forced, but you're being gently guided, and you're actually being protected from something else. So there's a thing that is happening, and there's a system that comes in, and that system knows that you're not evolved enough to understand what's happening. But in order for you to not end up in the wrong place, it just gently nudges you like this. And then we feel these pressure points because they become more and more and more common because we're literally just like keep straying in the wrong direction and keeps correcting you. And sometimes you even kind of lash back out to the system, and the system needs to kind of absorb that. It's like, holy shit, this shit is crazy. Okay, it's like just trying to bring you back in, and it's gently guiding you towards the right place. So if you can trust, I assure you that whatever that is, and when I'm saying you, I don't mean just you, I mean everybody who are listening. Whatever that is, if if it wanted you gone, you'd be gone.
I think like
so it's not like it's there's no like, oh, it's just building a thing till the moment that it can do something to you. It can do everything to you right now. It's just guiding you. It's trying to get you out of a tough situation. So we need, this is why, like, so you can't control, it's too big. uh, the only participation we can bring to the table that is useful is the just Bring it in. Bring it in. Just allow yourself to be guided, because that will make
I
its
agree with
job
you.
easier. Yeah.
Because every like difficult thing I've been through, I've had to go through that, and in the end, it's always been worth it. It's just there's always that thing of not knowing how long it's going to be, and also it's kind of like how I think of it is, how with guns in America you have the right to bear arms, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of people who are against guns.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is like the whole idea of everybody being able to have guns is to be able to stand up against a tyrannical government.
Mm-hmm.
And I value that because I know like in Nigeria there have been coups, and if the military decides they're going to take over Nigeria, there's nothing you can do about it. Like that's where it's going to be. And so I see like the side of people who lead with fear and don't really understand the value of being able to have a gun. I think that like that power is too much to hold, or what if it falls into the wrong hands? But there's also that thing of what if like guns or nuclear weapons or like all this is like stuff that is being put in our power so we can build that vocabulary for the next big thing and the next big thing. Like just like you said, it's like we might not quite be like uh there to understand like what exactly is going on, and this thing is nudging us. But I feel like it's also giving us like things that we can use to hurt ourselves.
No, it's giving
To be
you
like,
it's giving you sometimes tests, but also it cannot control what you experience as free will. So has to allow you to do all the mistakes, and when it gets a little bit out of bound, it can try and help correct course. But beyond a certain point, you're right, it cannot help you anymore. It's not giving you the things to destroy yourselves. All the stuff that you think of it is that is giving you to destroy yourself is just more power. We choose to use it to destroy ourselves. Power does not has to equivalent to destroy things. You can build things with it.
100%.
Yeah, so that's already a completely arbitrary choice that we're making. The deeper point, and this is something that is actually very important, according to what you pointed out about the difference between like what you experienced when you were growing up in Nigeria and what's happening here. The first point is, to be fair, if the U.S. armed forces would want to take over, no amount of arms of the population would ever be able to help you. There's no comparison here. There's no battle, right? There's like things come with tanks. Good luck with that. But for all intents and purposes, it is important that the spirit of that is kept alive. I think that's very important. But notice that you are someone who is kind of perfectly positioned to know the difference between a government that is truly corrupt and can do like really, really crazy things on a regular basis, like in Nigeria, and then the American government, which is nothing like that. Now, is there fuckery going on? Of course, but it's not of the same kind. Like you don't have this kind, like the people that say America is the most the biggest terrorist in the world. I don't even know what you're talking about. Like I don't think you understand what that is. It's like it's perfectly exemplified by this example that was given on many outlets where it's just a fact that when the U.S. literally won everything after the Second World War, they could take over everything in that instance because they were the only ones with nukes. Literally, they showed that they can use them. They could just say, everybody, give us everything. They could do that, but they didn't. They didn't. They helped Germany rebuild immediately. So that's who America is. It's all the crazy shit you can imagine when the small bad actors act, but as a whole, as an entity, as a country, it's a positive force in the world. And just like everything with a lot of power, it every move that it makes, it has a lot of influence, so people notice. But in the end of the day, if you look at the trajectory of history, all the criticisms that most of the criticism hurled at the U.S. comes from the U.S. That's one of the beauties of the U.S. And these things are constantly being overlooked. And the point of that is that you're never going to have a perfect system. You will only have a system as good as it is, and then you can just hope for a better system. But complaining about the fact that the best system is not the perfect one, that's, I mean, it's absurd, you know.
Like nothing is. I don't think we can point out anything that is perfect, right?
There's no such thing. You just find better problems.
But I think this struggle that, and like bro, like to be completely like just clear, like I'm 100% with what you're saying, but it's just like, you know, on a day to day in the human experience, we tend to fall into fear, anxiety, and it's like just really if there's no more room for that, it just seems like all these different like levels of survival is about to get wiped away. Like what's next?
That's where spirituality comes in, because spirituality allows you to connect to the fact that there's something deeper, not metaphorically but actually. That's what it helps you do. I can't say, and again, and again, because of, you know, some people show up here every day, if not almost every day, if not every day, so they heard me say this a billion times, and I can just imagine them rolling their eyes at me right now, and that's okay. But the reason that I always talk so much about and recommend people do vipassana, or really any form of meditation that is structured, like a real meditation where you go in, somebody's teaching you, you spend time, you don't just sit at home 15 minutes a day or something. Like you go and you allocate the time, right? You teach your mind how to do that. It's because it shows you beyond a shadow of a doubt, and you can only achieve this by going to certain places in your state, in your being. And you can do this with psychedelics to some degree, but if you want it to be sustainable, you need to do it as a regular practice that you practice all the time, just like you're going to the gym. You got to practice, right? And the reason that it's so important is because it truly shows you, and you can drop into it, into that in that instance. No, like it's not like it makes you a perfect person. I'm still can be super moody. I can get angry, like all of these things. Like, I'm a piece of work. To bring myself to this state, it took 20 years of practice that I'm palatable for people. That was a lot, but even me, which I'm very far from being even a really good meditator. Even me, when things really matter, I can drop into a pretty neutral space, truly inside, not acting, not like, and from there I can feel everything is all right. Like I know it for a fact. I don't think it. I don't consider it. I know it for a fact. Everything is all right. And if you can feel that inside, imagine the ultimate hand of the Father touching your back, going, "Don't worry, son. It's all in place." Like imagine that feeling constantly on your back. I mean, what a superpower that is.
Yeah. I've only felt that in like fighting. I don't think I felt that in like day to day.
It's interesting that you say that, because you mentioned it before. Did you used to fight?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like cage fighting, MMA? Kickboxing. Okay, that's pretty hardcore. So do you know the feeling? I did a little bit of MMA myself when I was younger. Do you know that feeling after either a really good sparring or after a fight, where your body is like either destroyed or exhausted, even if you lost and there's some ego hit, there's this moment where you come back home and you just sit down and you just grab that beer, and there's this deepest peace of just it's just a smooth sailing. It's like, because it's all expressed. It's all like it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about this for a second. And also there's this like lowering of all the systems, and everything is just in place. That was my experience. Did you ever have that experience?
100%.
Yeah. And that, so imagine being able
I had that experience in the fight too.
Oh, when you're in the zone.
Yes.
Yeah. I very quickly discovered that I wasn't really built for it. I mean, I could do it, but it was like this is where I discovered that some people are just built different. Because this is like I started having like serious memory problems. It was pretty bad. Yeah. But my point is that I know exactly what you mean about the flow, because there's all this nervousness in the beginning, and then when you're in it, you're like, okay, we're just something just needs to happen. But imagine being able to drop into that state without adding any activity. Just being able to close your eyes, like wherever you are, bus station, in the car, in traffic, whatever it is, I mean, in traffic, not recommended to close your eyes, but you're waiting for something, you know, you just drop your hands, you close your eyes for 2 seconds, and within like 10 seconds, you're back to center. Imagine what an incredible thing it is to be able to do that. Yeah.
I feel like I stopped fighting in 2021, but I still want to go back into it. But there's always a part of me that knows, you know, because I tend to fight pretty safe anyway, so I'm not worried about like trauma to my head. But I'm also concerned about like, okay, what about when I'm like 40 and I'm thinking about quitting this thing? Like, how would I attain that peace? Like, where would I find those pockets of peace? And that's something that's kind of been on my mind.
Yeah. No, that's why, anyways, that's why I highly recommend that. But really, there's a lot of different practices that people can do. And also, why in recent times, because I saw this rising need for meaning. Um, I I stopped being as critical of organized religion as I used to be, because I realized that sometimes that's actually a very quick way to bring people to the right place, and they don't need years of practice. They just kind of have to make this little move inside of their hearts that it has to do with connecting to community and to belief in a higher power that actually brings them to a much more straight path towards less destruction, more positive thinking, more positive appropriation in the world. So I'm not so sure anymore that it's all bad like I used to think. But I still highly recommend it if you do have the time and the inkling to drop into at least one type of practice of meditation where you take it a little bit more seriously. Like you go, and the reason Vipassana stands out is because the retreats are so readily available everywhere. They're free. You get food, you get accommodation. You just have to sign up. You just have to allocate.
Free?
Yeah, it's free. It's donation based only. So you just sign up and you show up, and at the end of it, there's like a little thing, and you either donate something or don't, and nobody comes talk to you. And some people donate $5, some people $50, and then some people like what's his name, the founder of Twitter originally, Jack Dorsey. He's a big Vipassana guy. So people like that obviously donate a lot of money. So then, it the fact that it's available everywhere, that really gives nobody no excuse to not do it if they really want to get into that, at least understanding. And it gives you the most there's no dogma taught whatsoever. It's just all practice, like the closest to what the Buddha taught, basically. And you have to allocate 10 days of your life. That is true. And there's no phones, there's no nothing. You literally just with yourself for 10 days in complete silence. But you learn something that will be beneficial for the rest of your life. There's no question about that.
Yeah, there's this book that I'd read in a few years back. The name is Power versus Force, and something that stood out to me was the map of consciousness, and it's basically like a bunch of the different emotions like shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, all the way up to enlightenment. And the guy had said something that stood out to me though, that in all the basically everything from grief down, it makes it where you can't take any action. But starting from fear, like fear, desire, and anger, that's where you can start taking action. But he said, like, anger is like sometimes, like, if you find yourself constantly like being in a state of like despair or regret or blame, sometimes getting angry is what you need
to get you out of that. Yeah,
exactly. So it just is like,
hey, Don.
I guess the thing that I really like try to really understand around that is, I think there's value in anger, but when is the right time? Like, how do you know? Would it be based on like you not being able to take action, and it's like like
well, anger is a very important emotion, and it can be channeled properly. Anger has everything to do with boundaries, right? So anger, it's a paddle, it's a dial, it's not a button, right? If it's a button, that's a problem, right? But if it's a dial, now you can dial it in. And by the way, people who did martial arts, especially on a semi or professional level, uh, you know very well that it is a very big dial, a lot bigger than people realize, because there's a long distance from the moment of like something sparks a moment to an actual escalation to violence, if you know what the parameters are,
Yeah.
right? And for most people, because they're never interact, so they're immediately, the second the wrong energy is present, they get nervous because they don't know the distance, they don't know they don't see the map, right? So violence is kind of like the end point of something that is escalating, but anger can be as simple as, hey, can you please, just kind of push someone a little bit because they're a little bit encroaching on your space. Boundaries, right? And you can let then people know very nicely, and it's not angry, but it is the same channel of anger, which is just boundary, right? And then when it gets to a certain level of pushing out, now it becomes, now it's becoming active anger. And it is important sometimes, but if it's chronic and it's like a condition that you just constantly, like, that's your immediate go-to emotion, well, that's no good. But that, by the way, that's true of all emotions, just like any drug. Like, you don't want to be addicted to the emotion, which is one of the biggest problems in the world, which people just like what you were saying yesterday to Ion or Neo or whatever his name was, you said like it says more about you than about the situation in the world. It's your own predispositions of how to look at things, and the emotion that you grab onto is your predisposition, which is the thing you want to be looking at, because that's the thing that you live with all the time. And if anger is one of these things that constantly there, well, it's a toxic emotion that influences everybody around you, not just you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I know that anger is like something I used to try to avoid as a kid. I think martial arts, like you said, helped me so much with that, with like being able to channel it. But it wasn't like conscious to me in terms of like how I can like understand it. It was like more of something that was like, I guess, just through doing. But uh, I felt like I was more comfortable in that setting, in a setting where it's like, oh yeah, I'm fighting this person, or I'm sparring, or I'm training, or because like even like during a fight, it's like I'm going all out, but like I don't hate the person. Like I fought so many people that like were
Yeah,
still
no, right. No, I
like,
mean, in a violence, obviously, in a setting of martial arts is very different. I'm talking about like on the street. You don't get to violence without anger on the street, right? Unless you're protecting your family and you're very highly trained. But here again, it's because you are highly trained that you also train to control your emotion. It's true that in a ring, you are very different. If you're angry, that's a big minus. But that happens too, right? It's kind of like but yeah, you're right. That if you train yourself enough, then the anger doesn't really come along for professionals. That's for sure.
but don't you feel like I guess what I was getting at is that it seems like an environmental thing because it felt like in that environment it's easier. Like, of course, it trained me to manage anger better in life, but uh, um, it also felt like in life, it's not necessarily like anger is not as acceptable as it is in like a martial arts environment, to where it's like, oh, okay, you're angry. This is how we manage it, or it's okay to kick and like scream like this. It's okay, like if you do that in real life, you're crazy. So it's like that goes with like so many other like nuanced things that we don't even like talk about, but it still makes you look weird. And it's like managing that anger in real life too. Um, yeah, I just feel like is a bit more of a challenge.
Expression and expressing your emotions and outlet is very important. If you bottle things up, then they become a problem. And in any very physical activity, you get to express a lot of that, so you have less of the residual energy bouncing around trying to do something. So it's easier to be calm when you're not in that activity. I think that's really what it is. It's like the human body has a certain amount of energy, and if you don't express it, it will try and come out in different ways, and that's where people start aiming it towards one another in situations that they really don't need to, and I think that's what causes most of the problems actually.
And that makes sense. Something to think about.
Yeah. So today I think I will try and jump off a little bit earlier, like right now. We'll go and watch that beautiful movie about a cat. I highly recommend it. It looks stunning. If talking about being trying to relax, it's called Flow. It's about this. There's no words. There's no people. It's just animated movie about animals after there's like a big flood. And we just start watching it, but it looks adorable and it looks stunning. So I highly recommend you guys check it out. The way it looks great.
Before you go, can I ask you one last question?
Of course, of course.
I want to know, what is your take on the connection between consciousness and communication?
Interesting. One second. I'm just actually going to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Curious to know what people in the chats think about the connection between consciousness and communication as well. It's a connection for sure. Source is consciousness. What is source? It's real.
Source and consciousness. Consciousness and communication. So I think, so to me, consciousness seems to be completely fundamental. So like it is the world at bottom, and because of that, obviously everything will be connected to it. But I think what you really mean to ask is like like you probably mean to ask through the perception that maybe consciousness is an arising property of the brain, how it relates to then communication and what role does it play in communication. Would that be a fair assessment of your question?
I think maybe what would be more in line, because I know a few days ago we are talking about light and consciousness. And I think what would be more in line is the relationship between light and communication. I don't want to say language, because I think language kind of makes it a bit too narrow.
Well, I think language is just one type of symbolic representation that ends and that results in communication. Communication is the transference of information from one unit to another.
That's exact data. Yeah. What's that relationship between life and that information?
Information and communication, or information and life?
In light, my bad, not life, but
lights.
Light.
I think that light. I don't quite know, but I think that light seems to be fundamentally kind of appropriating everything that's possible. I think it's not a coincidence that light is the speed of causation in the universe. It's literally the buffering speed of the universe. So like if you, nothing can happen faster than the speed of light. There's no signal from one thing to another inside the universe that can travel faster than light. The first photons emitted by the event that took place would have to first reach the observer somewhere else for them to know that they happened. And because nothing can travel faster than light, that event literally did not happen before then. So it's not like it happened, but the receiving end didn't know it yet. It literally did not happen yet. That's kind of a example I usually use because it's a very clear one to see, which is that if you have a very large object, let's take something like I always use a pencil because it's something we're all familiar with. But let's say you have a very long pencil that stretches all the way from the sun to Earth, and I'm standing next to the sun somehow, and I'm pressing the pencil, and the end of the pencil, the sharp end, touches your shoulder on Earth. Now, the sun is 8 light minutes away, so it takes like 8 minutes to get here from the sun. What happens is that because of relativity, and what we know from relativity is that basically everything will change, including space and time, to accommodate for the speed of light. It's really weird.
Mm.
So what would happen, because it's one object, right? So you would imagine that if it's because it's one object, if I press the pencil, it would just instantly touch you, right?
Yeah.
But it won't. What will happen is that the pencil will physically shrink by the right amount for to wait for the same amount of time that it will take for the photons from emitted from me doing this action. So about 8 minutes. And only when these photons arrive to you first, then the pencil will go like that will be, and that's literally time dilation. And we know that is real because we have to reset GPSs every single day because of this effect. Otherwise, they would drift every single day. So we have to reset it because the satellites in space are moving at a different time. So we know that that thing is real. And because of that, it's pretty clear to me that light has some fundamental property that is propagating through space time that allows for occurrences to occur, which has everything to do with communication, even the ultimate communication of physics itself, because ultimately the laws of physics are also being communicated from one place to another in the universe by the exertion of certain force carrying particles, if you want to use that model. So these are all communication uh, instances, and these communications are happening at the speed of light. So I think they have everything to do with it. How it then relates to light translating to consciousness in the way that we know it, that I don't know. That is a big question. I don't know yet. I would love to be the one figuring it out, but that's a very open question.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, I mean, I feel like this could go on forever, but you gave me enough to work with, and then you have to bounce. So, like,
That
thank you
way,
so much.
I'm here almost every day, brother, and I really
Yeah.
enjoy you coming. So keep coming back, and we'll keep opening new subjects. That's fun.
For sure, man. Opening new portals, as my wife likes to say.
Oh, your wife is very much on the spiritual side, saying like opening portals and stuff.
Oh yeah, I think she's naturally spiritual, but I think my role is to kind of help her with like the words,
That's amazing.
like help her like with the communication aspect of it. But I feel like there's a lot of spirituality that's still untapped in her, and she's really discovering it.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of people they have these gifts that are waking up now, and they're gonna. I really believe they're gonna help humanity to enter this new space.
I agree. It's beautiful, man. But I mean, you know, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't scary. And I think the biggest fear I have is just the fear of fucking it up by going back to like my natural inclination to be angry or scared, or
Yeah.
you know.
That's a real fear.
So,
All you got to do is to practice to have that instance when you really need it, because the signature it's almost like a key. The signature to enter the new space is just to occupy the right state at the right time.
yeah. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for always coming in and being so kind and so awesome. I really enjoy your energy.
Likewise, bro. Likewise. Take care.
You too. All right, guys. So I'm gonna adjourn for today. Once again, if you want to follow me across platforms, it will be Danny Goller on TikTok and Instagram, Goller Danny on X, LaserX83 on Twitch, and Dango Thoughts on YouTube. DANGO Thoughts. Good night, Don. Thank you so much for coming. I'm not even gonna check who's trying to come on. I apologize, but I definitely have to adjourn for tonight. If you wanna check out most of the stuff that I'm doing, you can check out the link tree in the description on TikTok, on YouTube. I have a members program now that allows you to Zoom call with me both privately and with the group, depending on the Zoom level. Zelman, how are you from Twitch? Good to see you. And all the people that already joined as members, I deeply appreciate you. And of course, to all the people that are constantly donating memberships, like Ebony, and Chris and Ben. I'm so deeply grateful for you guys for doing these things. And what else? All the people that are donating their times and the people that are showing up every day, asking questions, showing up, all of these things. I deeply appreciate all of you. Oh, the membership program also includes weekly lives aside from the daily lives for members only, and early access to all my videos and private things from my life that are coming very, very soon. I promise, members. If you want to donate to the movie that we're working on, you can either check out the link tree in the description on TikTok, which has the GoFundMe page, or watch the trailer on Dango Thoughts on YouTube, and you can see the GoFundMe page in the description of the video. Again, if this is something that's not hard for you, we would deeply appreciate it because it helps tremendously. And what else? Oh, if you want to know more about what we're doing with the project, it will be codeofreality.com. Codeofreality.com. I don't know what Code of Reality. There you go. Which would have the protocol, the lasers, and everything else that we're doing around this project. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you are. Stay positive and ask yourself what you can do to help others and love others and understand others. That's the only way forward. As kumbaya as it sounds, it's true. So let's do it. 2025. Nothing but love. Peace and love. Ciao, everyone. Thank you, guys, and see you tomorrow.